So Toni Bee and Jonathan Todd, thank you both so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us, Ferris. This is an honor.
Oh, it's a pleasure on my end. So, I want to start with a statistic. According to a report by Commonwealth Boston, in 2024, only 20% of Black third graders were at grade level on the MCAS, and that is compared to 60% of white students. So, based on your experience, what is contributing to the stark difference?
It's telling me maybe we're spending a lot more time online than in our books, no matter what efforts that the schools and administrations and even parents are doing. The pull of the digital world is just really hard. So I think that's one thing.
Jonathan, do you think that exclusively explains these discrepancies?
I mean, I'm gonna think it's systematic racism.
Yeah, because in that same report card, or at
Yeah.
least in Massachusetts, for instance, only 27% of third graders were at grade level, but that was compared to 60% of their white peers.
Yeah, and so and it's a discouraging figure, and we have to think of ways to intervene. In my, one thing as far as speaking of online, I think the devices do play a part. When I think of literacy, I think of reading and writing, and I go and I teach a lot of writing. And even just one example, and this was at a high school level, I was at a high school with actually the classroom of all students of color, and many of them were on devices. When I went to this other high school in like a high-end, it was an all-white classroom, there was a thing on the wall where students had to put their devices away. So there was this expectation that they put their devices away, whereas this other classroom, there wasn't that expectation. So I kind of found it frustrating teaching where a lot of students were on their devices. I was a guest, so I didn't feel like, hey, put that phone away. I didn't want to be that guy. But I thought that was interesting. And so I definitely think, the ability to self-focus is huge in being able to get the skills to
And
to
is it
read.
exactly, what is it exactly about the devices that then leads to students having lower levels of reading and writing proficiency?
It's freedom. Just the freedom. We speak about racism. I don't even know if so many kids are aware of it just because of the freedom that the digital world allows. They can go anywhere, create their own podcast, even money. Money is created online. So this level of freedom, the ability to speak on their own and say whatever they want to say around the world and get a worldwide response. I think it pulls us away from the tougher tasks of reading. And so racism, since racism is so prevalent, maybe in ways we can't see, then things like that, you'll see the differences in the classrooms where there's one requirement in one situation with folks who look a certain way and not with the next. And why is that? Not sure.
And of course, there are socioeconomic factors that come into play as well, right?
Absolutely.
We know that increasingly people are struggling to buy groceries, struggling to feed their families. Some parents are working multiple jobs. Some parents are the only parent in the household, right? So that could make it harder for a student to get reading help at home or have someone reading to them. That could also be that they're coming to school hungry and can't focus.
Yeah.
Or maybe they're learning English, right? And at the same time, trying to be taught how to read, and it can all get kind of lost when that social safety net isn't present. So is it on, where does the responsibility lie, right? Like you were thinking, as long as school has been around, that's been the place where the reading should happen. But we also know that at home, a lot of times that's where the devices are being provided and consumed. Yeah.
I think to your question about the role of the devices, it's so distracting, and if it's in the classroom, it just shouldn't even be there. Because if I, as a teacher, I'm instructing something, if you're distracted, that should be completely off the table. But I think also, as far as the responsibility, I think one, the ability of the young person to self-focus, but then also I think that support from the caring adult to intervene, to be able work one-on-one with students. So I teach a lot of classes, and I'm teaching kids how to both write and draw comics, but a lot of it is writing, and I try to keep my classes small so that I can focus one-on-one with the students. And it just makes a huge difference. I mean, I taught last week at a camp. There was 5 students, and I was teaching them journalism, comics journalism, using the medium of comics to tell true stories. And so ideally, each kid gets to have their own topic. And so again, it's very labor intensive. We need to work closely with students one-on-one. So some of the older students can be able to go on their own, but there were 2 in particular, and I think they had ADHD. And I knew that I had to sit down. And once I sat down with them, they completely got it. And it was really a rewarding experience. So, if we can, as a society, raise, the funds to be able to reduce class sizes so that educators and other paraprofessionals can come in and work one-on-one. It's really, sometimes it's just 1 or 2 little nuances that makes the kid go, aha. And so I think that both the ability for the kid to self-focus, but then also that support from a caring adult, I think is crucial for raising those literacy rates so that all kids can achieve it the same way.
Mm-hmm. Who were those caring adults in each of your lives that made reading and writing fun and accessible for you?
Wow. Great question. My dad. My dad, he just loved the word. He got his education, and he learned Latin in school. And then whenever we had a word to look up, he said, when there is a word within the definition that you don't understand, look it up again. And so one word,
that's what I'm talking about.
oftentimes,
Fun dictionary game.
the start of the dictionary games.
Yes.
And so it just kind of expanded and made me love words. And also my mother was a school teacher.
Okay.
So I think both of those pieces, when you were talking about who supports these young Black people, Black and brown children who go home and they may not have the support, it's definitely, it could just take one person who loves the word and shares it with you. But also, there's aunts, there's uncles, there's folks who just sit down really quick and read with you, and they make the words come alive. So a lot of times our children are depending on those other family members who won't hurt them and who share literacy with them in a fun way.
Mm-hmm. Outside of the classroom, right? There's so little control that educators have around what goes on in people's homes.
Yeah.
But what support do you offer through GrubStreet, through the fellowship, and the other work that you do to allow families and equip them to support literacy for their children?
Currently, I'm involved in a youth center in Cambridge, and it's wonderful. They're like, can you bring poetry? A lot of the after-school programs, the extracurricular activities, that is where the importance comes. So I find myself reaching out and showing up where teens are just bookish. They do so much in terms of supporting young people. Portia
Very cool space.
you know it. Yeah, Portia. And what Portia and Bing did there, and to invite young people into the space, it's just wonderful. But also at GrubStreet, they have an entire teen summer program, and throughout the year, they support the teens. I hope to get involved with them even more so. In mass poetry, they just had an entire celebration in the city of Boston. And so what we have to find, what our choice is as adults, is to go and find the teens where there are many programs that need creative writing and also poetry, which goes back to what do they like and what inspires them. So sometimes the onus is upon the adults. To volunteer and take that time just to say, well, what do you like to read and what are you into in terms of creative writing, and spark that specifically. And speaking of spark, Did I mention the Spark Art Truck? Another piece that Mass Art is doing, Aqua Holmes, who's a children's book illustrator, she has the Spark Art Truck for a number of years. The fact that she takes the time to go to libraries, particularly, and communities of color, where the young people can engage with the art, but also words too. Wonderful. I mean, that's how you do it one-on-one and engage the young folks.
Is there a story that sticks out in your mind of when a student really found that spark through any of those activities?
Well, I used to be a substitute teacher, and there was a naughty child. Naughty kids, they need concentration, like you were saying. And they said, "Can she be with you? She's a great poet." And I said, "Well, share your words." And she did. And I said, "I want to hear more." Her face changed. Her face changed. And ever since then, this was in 8th grade. It's 5 years later. And so I find that, again, you connect with them, you hear what they have to say. She was doing rap. I was with it. Hey, about those naughty words again. But,
That is a form of poetry.
yeah. And I seen her expand and to go into other programs and really take a hold of public performance. If you can create these Black and brown kids, if we can create or inspire them to be public speakers and writers, I've seen it happen.
And how important is it for there to be culturally responsive material? How does that contribute to the success of a child learning to read and write?
Yeah, I think that when I think of a culturally responsive, I think that it could mean many things depending on the community. That's the basic of just connecting with someone in general, and just being open to like where they're coming from, their point of view. And one of school I was in, and a student came late to the class the guest class I was getting, and he was like, "Yeah, hey nigga, blah 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 blah." And if I was in a different environment, I wouldn't, wouldn't know how to take that. But I was like, no, this is just how they're communicating, and so we're just rolling with it, and just staying calm, and just. But then connecting, then that person they came later, they ended up being like the biggest contributor to the class discussion. And so it's just taking people where they are and just sharing what you have to share, being yourself. For if they have ADHD, knowing that you have to sit down and it's not going to look like, what you had envisioned, but if you just take time out and look closely at what they are saying through their work, you can. I mean, people are brilliant. It's just it might look a little different, but I think it's just like being thoughtful and taking time and caring, and that just goes a long way.
And Toni, in your experience, I think about what you're sharing about this young woman and her poetry. And I was like, if you just gave any of these kids the lyrics to their favorite art, their favorite song, right? And had them follow along. And I wonder if that would be one way to show them, like, yeah, the person you admire who created this piece of work had to start somewhere, writing something down, or at least thinking of the words and matching them in a rhythmic way.
Yeah, hip hop culture is, still here and thriving. But
50 plus years later.
But the words.
Yeah.
And so something I challenge young people, and I'm not even sure if we could do this because of the intensity of the words. But I thought of a lesson plan, and I said, take your favorite song. Take the swear words out, put something else in it. I mean,
that's a great prompt.
we have to begin to take what has been maybe packaged for us and begin to have our young people think critically about it, because we aren't that. I keep thinking that we come in at so many intersections. We're not just in the bricks playing basketball. We live in Hyde Park in $1 million+ homes and go to tutoring and play basketball. And we may be trans. And so there are gender, there are likes and dislikes. We have a whole skating board culture. And so we're not just what has been packaged to us. I think the challenge is having young people just kind of become critical thinkers, us as adults and them saying, well, serving it back to us, saying, think critically about it.
Yeah, which is so technology and social media has made it a little bit harder to think critically because of all of the different things that are coming at you. But where are the opportunities for something? I mean, we talked about those, whether it's reading influencers or whatever else it may be. What are the opportunities for technology to aid in supporting literacy?
Tutoring is huge. I mean, there have to be on YouTube. You can set up at any time, like the reading you were saying, read a book. There's that opportunity to spark imagination, and really using the online world and online learning. I know that there's Prism 1 and Prism 2 for like that has been introduced in the classrooms, and I'm wondering how our governor or our schools can integrate the YouTube and digital learning opportunities into our classrooms.
And I'm glad you raised that because Governor Healy has proposed increasing funding for literacy programs across the state of Massachusetts. Now, of course, this comes as we're seeing cuts on the federal level to the Department of Education or other programs that support children's learning. So how imperative is it for on whether it's local, state, or federal government for that support to be there, financially?
Well, I think to increase, to decrease class sizes, to add more support, you need to pay people. I think, speaking of like culturally responsive, like a lot of Black folks who become educated, especially live in Massachusetts, you need a certain income. So sometimes, unfortunately, when you're working in education, it's not paying what you need to live here. So then they can't be in the classrooms helping to increase the literacy rate among other Black folks. So it's like the money, throw money at the not throw, but the money, more of it. Let's reduce the class size. Let's get more tutor support in there. I think it is critical.
Are there other ways that you would like to see any potential funding increases implemented?
Oh, bringing in specialists, comic book writers,
You can do
writers
that
like me.
one-on-one or one-on-two interaction.
Yeah. Also, Paris, maybe taking things, maybe using some of the funding directly for after-school programming.
Okay.
There's a lot of time.
Jonathan will be there.
Yeah. I mean, I want to be in those rooms too. But there are people who look just of our age, younger. I think we should get older citizens involved back into those programs and even in the schools. It gives you that sensitivity towards elders, and then we bridge a generational gap.
And make it really communal, because I know that, Toni, we were talking earlier about the Poetry Garden program that you have, where you have poets you partner with gardens in the city and have poets go and be in those spaces and share their art in those spaces. And I'm just imagining if a school field trip, right, where students can come and work with those poets and also get the added benefit of interacting with nature.
And ask questions too. It's one thing to have a poet of Reggie Gibson status come and speak to you, but then what if Reggie reads a poem and you're able to ask a question back? And so a lot of times we treat our entertainers as untouchables, but with the Poets in the Garden program, not only is the lineup diverse, you can ask your poet and your artist questions, which goes back to that piece on, well, what do you like? Just by an artist answering a question, it could bring that light and that joy and that desire to engage with poetry or literature for the young person and their family.
Yeah, I think, and I like the money for it towards enrichment would be great. some schools, like a lot of private schools, they just already have a budget for author visits. And then others, they don't. I mean, I went to school I was mentioning in Boston, it's like all black classroom. I just had to volunteer to go, but as a full-time writer, I need to make a living. So I was able to, use some other funds to go. But for those types of author visits where you could meet people who write books, and then even I have some author visits where I just speak to your points, just speak to students. This is my artistic journey. But then I have others where I do hands-on workshops. But again, I need to limit those to smaller groups. So I would have to come for multiple days to do that. But then I get to work one-on-one, and then you could help really, encourage their writing and have them spark their interest. Because for me, drawing comics, that again made me a very strong writer. So if you can spark that interest, and a lot of times it comes through that one-on-one, it's great. Even speaking of that one-on-one interaction, I've gone into schools where the first thing I do is I go around the room, I ask kids their name and their age or their interests. And in one school, a girl asked me, why do I want to know that? She wasn't used to people asking about her. And I was, I want you to be seen here. I want, but I think it was a little disappointing that, she wasn't used to, she was just being talked at and not listened to.
And sharing some of her story.
Yeah.
It doesn't work to have someone who does not look like you in front of you engaging. And I think I'm hoping, my fingers are crossed, that even at this time in the nation, that we can begin to do a recruitment of Black and brown and Asian teachers. Just to have a teacher in front of you, or I happen to be privileged enough to have gone to all Black schools in Roxbury at a wonderful time. And now there are even more in terms of melanin kids because we have our charter schools. But there is gold to having someone look at you and care about you and even say that, like, what is your name and what do you like, and have that interaction that you were discussing because they are seen. So I think that is one piece that we definitely need more Black and brown and Asian teachers in our school, so kids can say, oh, you really do care. Even if they don't act like it. There's something about seeing yourself, the reflection in the mirror.
Yeah, I definitely think, having educators that look like you is very compelling and like an extra. But I mean, I wouldn't say that having teachers that don't look like you is not effective. It's just, I think it's more that as long as they're caring and sincere and authentic, and that being that caring adult. One thing I also know that doesn't work well is the big class size is not being able to work one-on-one, so that you could really troubleshoot what is the area that someone's having trouble with. Yeah.
And help us understand. I mean, I mentioned those numbers at the beginning. If those numbers continue to fall over the next decade or so, what kind of danger are we in? Deep ancestral sigh. We get a lot of those.
Bad health care.
Bad health care.
Even more, the numbers for health care, negative results for health care, it will increase. You just can't simply read a document. So many people are from other countries. We have young children being community health workers and translators for their parents. I look to the younger, I wonder, are they really the young person who is translating? Are they getting all that they need literacy-wise? And so in the long run, we have, what does the digital workforce? There are places like Google. I'm in Cambridge. You have Google, you have MIT, you have Harvard. In between that space, are our children literate enough? Maybe Cambridge kids, but are our children literate enough to go right in these places that professionally are speaking AI, in Chat GPT? Now you press a button, you ask a question, and you get a script. That has made it even more easier for people not to be literate. And so
Wow, that's a good
I wonder where we're going to go with everything being so much more easy. How do we begin to create a culture where our kids will, I'm literate, I can read that paper. We're talking banking, we're talking contracts. And already we've seen so much where Black folks back in the day just signed on the dotted line and gave so much away. And so we have to take the time to say, pause, read. I'm not sure how we're going to get there, but I do know maybe it starts with the little free libraries.
Yeah, I love
Not
those.
sure. I love those.
Whenever you see them, put a book in, take a book, put a book in.